Sorry. I think we have to start from this slide, right? Collecting bank. Is that correct, Gavin?
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we'll start from here. Today we are going to start from there. That is about the collecting of checks. Uh, Collecting of checks. A collecting bank is the bank who undertake to collect the amount of checks and bills for his customers. Now you are aware, under the banker-customer relationship, we have a contractual contract. So under the contract, once a bank open an account for a customer, especially a current account, the bank has an obligation to collect checks and bills for their customers. That is a contractual obligation. Wrongful, uh, uh, wrong. If we have not collected the check wrongfully, that means without a valid reason, that is amount to a breach of contract. So the customer, the account holder, can sue the bank for damages in such event. The bank has no legal obligation to collect checks drawn on other banks. That is another important point that we have to remember. Under the banker-customer relationship, the banker is obliged to collect the checks of the customer for the customer which are issued by the same bank. Now, for example, if you take commercial bank, the commercial bank is obliged to collect the checks for their current account holder if those checks are commercial bank checks. For example, we say Siripala has a current account with the commercial bank. The commercial bank has an obligation towards Siripala to collect checks that Mr. Siripala, received from the customers of commercial bank. But commercial bank does not have any obligations to collect the HNB or Sampath Bank check received by Mr. Siripala. So the obligation, legal obligation, remember this is the legal obligation we are discussing, right? Not the practical scenario. The practical scenario we will discuss later. The legal obligation is to collect the checks of the same bank. There's no legal obligation to collect checks drawn on other banks. However, this is an extra service provided by the bank. Bank has no obligation, but banks now collect other checks, other banks' checks also, drawn on other banks. So Siripala, if we receive a check from Sampath, a customer of a Sampath bank, commercial bank collect those checks to Siripala's account. So that is a practice developed by banks, and it is an extra service provided by the banks to their customers. As we discussed before, when we give an extra service to the customer, that is not a right of a customer and it is not a duty of the bank. So the customers cannot demand for extra services or as a demand as a duty. So example, ATM machines are extra services that we provide for the customers. Likewise, we have several extra services or special services that we provide for customers which are not coming under a duty of the bank under the banker-customer relationship. Collecting bank has to take extra precautions to safeguard the interest of the true owner. As we discussed last week also, when we are collecting other banks' checks, drawn on other banks' checks, and not only that, even we collect the checks of our own customers, the collecting bank has an obligation, apart from the obligation towards the customer, the account holder, bank has an obligation towards the true owner, But as I explained last week, you know that the true owner can be a third party. Most of the time, the true owner could be a third party who is not a customer of our bank. Right? The example I gave you, you may remember, Siripala has a current account at a commercial bank, right? He issue a check to, we say, Nimal. From Nimal, the check is stolen by Kamal. Then Kamal negotiate the check to PL, and PL is a customer of commercial bank. HNB, right? So PL deposit the check to HNB. So HNB is the collecting bank. So HNB has a duty towards their own customer PL. And not only that, the HNB, the collecting bank, has a duty towards the true owner. True owner is not a customer of commercial bank or HNB. He's a third party, not known to the collecting bank here in this scenario. However, the legal principle is the collecting bank has a duty to safeguard the interest of the true owner. Right? True owner is the person who is legally entitled for the value of the check. Now, if you take this scenario, PL, who holds the check last, has no title to the check, because in between this transaction, there is an illegal transaction. The check was stolen from Kamal by another person, right? So then the title won't pass from there. The chain is broken. The title chain is broken. So therefore, the title has not passed to the other holders after this illegal activity or illegal possession. So therefore, PL does not have a right to receive the value of the check. Right? So therefore, when he deposits the check to his account and if he receives the money, then the true owners, that means the person who has a legal right to receive the money, will be infringed. So his rights will get affected. So therefore, the collecting bank has always a duty towards the true owner. So that we have to remember when we act as a collecting bank, collecting checks for our customers. Remember, there is a principle like that. The bank always has to safeguard the interest of the true owner. If you have any questions from here, can ask. If not, I will go to the next one. So what are the risks and liabilities of the collecting bank? We say we have a duty towards the customer, one side, under the bank-customer relationship. On the other side, we have a duty towards the true owner when we are collecting checks. Remember these two obligations. Then it is easy to remember the obligation of the bank or risk of the collecting bank. One side, you have a contract with your customer, account holder. So you have an obligation towards your own customer. And the other principle is, the law principle is, the collecting bank has a duty towards the true owner. First, we'll take the first one, our customer's contract. What is our obligation towards our customer, the account holder, current account holder? If bank fails to carry out any statutory duty or legally recognized duty under the banker-customer relationship, that is amount of breach of contract. So what is the contract that we are discussing here? The contract is banker-customer relationship contract. As when a customer open a current account, bank and the customer creates a contract. Under that contract, the bank has obligation to carry out the contract or perform the contract. When a bank fails to carry out any statutory duty or any legally recognized duty under the banking law or under the banker-customer relationship, then it is amount of breach. It is amount of breach of contract. Under the contract law, when the contract is breached by a party, the other party, the innocent party, can sue the wrongful party. So here, if bank breach the contract by not collecting a check, for example, simple example, without a valid reason, because of that failure, if customer face damages, the customer can sue the bank. Customer can sue the bank. Customer can sue the bank for the damage, for the loss that he occurred, not for the value of the check. Sometimes the value of the check might be a lower amount, but the actual damage to the customer could be a big amount. So the bank is liable not for the value of the check. It is, remember, it is not recovery of the value of the check. It is a case based on breach of contract, where the customer can sue the bank for the actual loss and damage. So that is under the contract law, breach of contracts towards our customer. That is number one. So any questions from there, if you have, before I go to the next one?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, can hear. Yes.
Is this regarding this, collecting of checks? Earlier slide it was mentioned the bank has no obligation for collect. Hello.
Yeah, Rangana, I can't hear you properly. Can you speak a little louder?
Now is it okay?
Yeah, tell me, Rangana, what is your question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear Rangana.
My question is like earlier slide it was mentioned collecting of checks is a extra service provided by the banks. So in that case, how it becomes a liability or obligation since it is extra service?
Okay, right. Remember here I said the bank has no legal obligation to collect checks drawn on other banks. Right?
Yes.
Please give me a second. Sorry. So Rangana, as I told you, bank has no obligations to collect the checks drawn on other banks. Right? It's not a legal obligation. We have no obligation to collect the checks of the other banks, but our own checks we have to collect. Right? Just give me a second. I'm getting a call. Just me. Sorry about that, Rangana. Right. So anyway, for the checks issued by our own customers or drawn on our own banks, we have obligation under the banker-customer relationship. So that is number one. As you said, if those checks are written on other banks, we have no legal obligation to collect. But as I told you, that we have developed a practice where we provide a special service to the customers that we collect the checks of the other banks also, right? Even though there is no legal obligation, that is a practice that we have developed. So remember, as you are correct, Rangana, when the check is drawn on other banks, we have no legal obligation. But if the check is drawn to us, if that means our own customers check, not the account holder, he might get a check from another person who is also a customer of our bank. So in a situation like that, we have a legal obligation. So this comes under a scenario like that, breach of contract. If we have not collected the check without a valid reason, so then it is a breach of contract. Clear, Angada?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Any other questions from there before I go to the conversion? So I think it is not that difficult. It's coming under breach of contract. What you have to remember is the first obligation towards our own customer. It comes under the contract law. Contract is banker-customer relationship. Obligation is that we are obliged to collect the checks of our customer drawn on our bank. If we fail to perform the duty, that is amount of breach of contract. The customer can sue the bank for the real loss, not the value of the check, but the real loss. So that number one. So then we go to the number two, conversion. This is a little bit different from the previous one, little bit, I would say, complicated. We'll go one by one. Conversion, always remember, conversion is another I would say wrong. It is a wrong against the true owner. That is the difference between a breach of contract and conversion. Breach of contract is a wrong against the customer, account holder, our own customer. Conversion is a different thing. Conversion is an obligation towards the true owner. You may remember I said that when we talk about the obligations of the collecting bank has obligation towards two people, two persons. That is our own customer and the true owner. So the first one we discussed, breach of contract, is offense against the customer. Second one, the conversion, is a offense or the wrong against a true owner. So this you have to remember. First of all, conversion is a wrong against a true owner. So who commit the wrong? It is the collecting bank. Again, remember. So this I'm stressing you because this I have seen when you are writing answers in your exam papers, that I don't know whether you have not and the previous students, they have not understood the principle behind this, because they mix this conversion with other law principles. They think that this is a offense committed by a paying bank. It is not the case. Remember, we are talking about the collecting bank's obligations. So conversion is an offense committed by collecting bank. So what are the 2 points that we have to remember? First of all, number one, it is a offense against the true owner, right? Not against the customer or the account holder. Number two, it is an offense committed by the collecting bank, not by the paying bank, right? So what is the interpretation for the conversion? Interpretation is this: interference in depriving the true owner from the rightful benefit of the instrument. Interference in depriving the true owner from the rightful benefit of the instrument. So what is the instrument we are talking about here? It's a check, right? So as I told you before, the true owner is the person who has a rightful or legal right to receive the value of the check. So there's no doubt about that, right? It is not the holder, right? Holder can have a defective title or fraudulent title, right? So if we say the holder has a right to receive the money of the or value of the check, it is not correct. It is true owner who has the right to receive the money of the or the value of the check. So the true owner has a legal right. If someone deprived a true owner or stopped him by receiving the value of the check, that is offense. That is offense. So conversion is that interference in depriving the true owner from the rightful benefit of the instrument. If we say this in Sinhala, සැබෑ අයිතිකරුට චෙක් පතෙහි වටිනාකම ලබා ගැනීමට නොහැකි වනසේ මැදිහත් වීම. So that is conversion. So what is the offense by the commit by the collecting bank? The collecting bank interfere to the transaction and deprive the true owner by receiving the value of the check. So that is actually there's no mens rea or mental element, because the collecting bank has no idea or no intention to deprive the true owner from receiving money. So I will explain this. Now we say A is, I will take the same example that we discussed. We say A is we say Sunil. Sunil is the customer or account holder, current account holder of commercial bank. Sunil issue a check to Kamal. From Kamal, the check is stolen by PL. Right? PL is a customer of HNB. We'll take a simple scenario. Right? 3 people, Kamal, Sunil, Kamal and PL, right? Sunil is the account holder of commercial bank, current account holder. He issued a check to Kamal, right? From Kamal, the check is stolen by PL. Now PL is the holder, right? But when you take this transaction, you see, even though PL holds the check, PL has no title to the check. Who is the true owner? True owner is Kamal. True owner is Kamal. Now PL is an account holder of, we say, HNB. PL deposit the check at HNB. HNB collect the check. So now, then you know there is a clearance process. So then the check will or image will go to the central clearance and so on, and ultimately the money will come to HNB. Commercial bank will debit the Sunil's account and will send the money to HNB. So HNB will credit PL's account. So ultimately, money will go to PL's account. Now take this scenario, right? Who is the true owner? The true owner is Kamal. Sunil issued the check to Kamal. Who has received, who is entitled to get the money or legally entitled? It is the true owner, that is Kamal. Now who has received the money? Money has gone to PL's account. PL's account. So PL is not the true owner. In that case, the payment is wrong. So what is the remedy then Kamal has? Kamal is the true owner. Now he wants his money, the value of the check. So what is the remedy available to him? This is an offense. You see, it's an offense or it's a wrong done by collecting bank. By collecting a check for their customer where the customer does not have a title who is the rightful owner? It's the true owner is Kamal. It's a third party, not known to the collecting bank, not known to the paying bank, right? What is the offense? Offense is interference in depriving the true owner from rightful benefit of the instrument. So by collecting the check to PL's account, HNB has interference with Kamal's right and deprived Kamal from receiving the value of the check. If that is called conversion. That is called conversion. So the true owner can take action against the collecting bank. So that is based on the conversion. Any questions from there? I believe that you may have questions. Conversion. Any questions? Rangana, are you clear?
So this is regarding in the position of HNB. HNB has not willfully done that, no,
Yes.
to transfer the money to PL, because HNB, how is what is the position of HNB, like how they can verify the title of a check when they accept the deposit, like?
Yeah, good question, Rangana. Now, as I told you before, this conversion is a straightforward or straight liability. There's no a mental part of this wrong. Now, you know, then when we say offense or wrong, there are some offenses where it has a mental element and the physical element. Now, for example, uh, 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 we say now there is a speed limit mention restrictions in highways. We have the knowledge when we uh, uh, if we pass the speed limit, it is a offense which has a mental element and also a physical element. What is the mental element? We have the knowledge of speed limit, knowing that we breach it. So that is the knowledge. Then what is the physical element? We physically we drive the vehicle over the limit. So there are two parts of the offense. But there are some offenses where the mental element is not necessary. You don't want to prove a mental element. Just the physical element is enough for that. For a conversion is an offense like that. So whether you have the knowledge or not is immaterial. In conversion, the collecting bank definitely have no idea or no clue about the true owner. Actually, if you know that Mr. Pial is not the true owner of the check, first of all, the collecting bank should not collect it. If still collect, that is not only a conversion, that is a breach of contract and also negligence, right? So, so definitely there's no mental element. It's a straight liability. Knowledge is not necessary. If you have the knowledge, you anyway can't should not collect the check. Conversion is an offense without a mental element. It's a straightforward liability. The collecting bank is liable to the true owner. You can't take the position or take a defense like that. You can't say that we didn't have the knowledge, so therefore we are not liable. It is not a defense because it is a conversion is a straightforward obligation. So then, what is the precaution that we can or we have to follow? So you may remember we said when we are collecting checks, instruments, we have two obligations. One is to our or towards our own customer. The second one I said it is about the true owner. So if you are collecting a check for your customer, that you may remember, I have experienced this. The bank officers, they ask questions. They ask about about the title of the check, basically. So from whom you got this check and for what reason you got this check. Likewise, they questions. Of course, if it is deposited over the counter, that you can ask that question, but you know that today we have machines and all. In a situation like that, with the technology, that we have missed that opportunity to interview the customer or inquire the customer and get the information. But still, if you have any doubt about the check that he received for his that you collect for your customer, you have an obligation to inquire about that. So that is required. For example, if you say that you received a check from a customer to collect the check, which is a company check uh, issued by the company to a director of the company to his personal account. We say the customer, then in a situation like that, you have an obligation to inquire from the account holder for what reason the company has issued the check to the director. Uh, Likewise, we have to be very careful when we are uh, collecting checks for our customers. It could be a conversion. So, Rangana, for your question, the answer is knowledge is not necessary. This is a straightforward, straight liability. Mental part of the offense is not required. Even you collect the check without the knowledge or without any clue who is the true owner, still the collecting bank is liable for the true owner. So that is my answer, Rangana. Hope you are clear.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so then we'll go to the next one. Right? What is the liability on the conversion? When the collecting bank receive the proceeds of the check for the customer who has no title to the check, the bank will be doing something which is inconsistent with the right of the true owner of the check, thereby committing act of conversion. Now you see, by collecting the check and receiving the money for the customer who has no title to the check, itself is a wrong. The mental element part is not required, or the knowledge is not required. By collecting the check and by receiving the funds for the customer who has no title to the check has been recognized as a offense, which is called conversion. The banker who collects the check for the customer who has no title to the check is liable to the true owner of the check for the conversion and for the money and money had received. So what the true owner can claim that money from the collecting bank. So that the true owner, that is a third party, can sue the collecting bank for on conversion for the value of the check. This is, again, remember, true owner sue the collecting bank, not the paying bank. True owner sue the collecting bank. True owner, he will not file action against the paying bank. He will not file action against the person who deposit the check. He will sue the collecting bank under conversion. So then under the conversion, the collecting bank has to pay that value to the true owner. So then what are the remedies available to the collecting bank? The collecting bank then has to file action against their own customer and recover the value of the check, because his customer, the customer of HNB, does not have a title to the check. So it is a mistaken payment. So therefore, the bank can recover the money from their customer. But first of all, the bank, the collecting bank, has to settle the true owner. So that is the liability on the on conversion. So the true owners remedies against the collecting bank in a situation like that, in a scenario like that. What are the remedies available to the true owner, right? So as I uh, 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 explained you before, and also as my experience, the conversion is a principle that is very difficult to teach to the bankers, because it is very difficult to convince the bankers uh, this conversion part, because they always think or look at this from the angle of a banker. There are a few law principles there, uh, which is difficult to convince the bankers, because they are in they are looked at those principles from the banker's point of view. So to learn this, it is always my advice, you have to be neutral, and then look at this principle. Then it will go to your mind, because when you step into the shoes of the banker, you always see those principles are not correct or not just. It is not favorable to the banks. Likewise, so first of all, you have to study the principle. Then you have to see what are uh, the things that we can do, prevent the liability. So that's what we have to do. So conversion again, uh, if you really want to see the study this, you may step into the shoes of the true owner. Then you think about the situation. Say I am the true owner of the check, right? My check is stolen by somebody and has taken money. So what I want as a true owner, you want your money, the value of the check. You don't, as a true owner, I don't care about who has stolen my check. I don't care about the paying back, or I don't care about the collecting back. What my interest is to get the money, the value, because I have the right to receive the money. So there is a principle, law principle, where I can use as a true owner to get the money from the collecting bank. That is the easiest point. So when I sue the collecting bank, I will get the money. So then the collecting bank has to go behind their own customer and get the money from the customer. So that is the law works, right? That's how the law works. So what are the true owner's remedies against the collecting bank? The true owner of the check can sue the collecting bank either on or both of the following grounds. So he has two remedies. Number one, for damages on conversion, an action for the money had then received the bank to the use of the true owner. So he can ask two remedies under conversion. He can ask the value of the check. So he can ask the value of the check, and he can ask also damages. That is the danger part. The value of the check, of course, then you have to you can recover from the customer. But if you have to pay damages to the true owner, that will be a big problem, because practically the amount that you paid as damages will not be able to recover from your own customer, though you are legally entitled. So there are two remedies for the true owner: for the value of the check and actual damage that you can claim on conversion. The true owner can conversion from the collecting bank. This is very important. True owner sue the collecting bank on conversion. Conversion is an offense committed by the collecting bank, and it is an offense against the true owner. These things that you have to register in your mind. Please be independent. Don't think that you are a banker. So if you think that you are a banker and if you looked at this, then you will not uh, uh, actually register this in your mind. Be independent, be unbiased, and think, right, okay, there is a offense called conversion, right? It is, the offense is depriving the true owner by receiving the money of the check. True owner is the person who has the legal right to receive the money. Collecting bank, by collecting the check of a wrong from a customer who has no title to the check, prevent the true owner by receiving the money. So therefore, the true owner can sue the collecting bank, and he can ask the value of the check and the damages. So then the collecting bank has to go behind the customer or the person who received the money and collect that money from that person. That is how the conversion works. Any questions from here? I believe the conversion is clear to you. So then we'll see. So now you, as a bank, now you are worried, right? You say, as Rangana said, we don't have any intention, we don't have any knowledge about the true owner, and actually we don't know that we are committing an offense like conversion. So how do we know whether the person who brings the checks, the holder, is the true owner, or whether he has a bad title? So all those things we don't know. And on the other hand, most importantly, the conversion is a straight liability. Mental part or the mental element is not necessary. Knowledge is not necessary. So if you have collected the check, that is more than enough for the conversion offense. So in a situation like this, what is our protection as a collecting bank? So the collecting bank has a defense in a case like this. Defense defense means that if the true owner sued the collecting bank, the collecting banks can say, we are not liable because of this. This is our defense. What is the defense? Section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, right? Section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance says, if the collecting bank has received the money for the customer in good faith without negligence, the bank has not incur any liability to the true owner, right? This is, you have to remember, section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance says, if the collecting bank has received the money for the customer means the person who deposits the check, who has no title to the check. But the collecting bank has received the money from the paying bank for their customer. Number one, there are two parts that the collecting bank has to prove. In good faith without negligence. So then you can say that we are not liable. So basically, when a true owner sue the collecting bank on conversion, right? That means that it is proven the person who received the money has no title to the check. So therefore, it is a clearly conversion, offense of conversion. Right? Now the true owner has proved the collecting bank has committed a wrong call, conversion. So then the collecting bank's defense comes. Collecting bank say, yes, we have committed the offense conversion, but we are not liable to pay the money to the true owner. Because we take the protection under section 82. Yes, we have received the money from the paying bank, but we have received the money in good faith, and we have not done any negligence while we are collecting the check. So therefore, we are not liable to pay the money. So that is their defense. So these two parts that we have to prove, that we have collected and received the money in good faith, and we have collected the check without negligence. So if we can prove this, then we can shift the liability. So then the true owner has to go behind the person who received the money. So that is how we can uh, avoid the liability under conversion. That is our main defense that we can use as a shield to protect ourselves against conversion. Any questions from here? Okay, so then I will go to the next one. Now I told you to get the protection under section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. We have to prove, the collecting bank has to prove two things. Number one, good faith. Number two, without negligence. Now, what is good faith? Good faith means that we have to prove that we collected the check, we received the money uh, uh, with honest, uh, honestly, actually, with honestly, without any unfaith intention, right? So this part, of course, it's not difficult to prove unless we have done something which is not inconsistent with the law or practice. Sometimes favorable to most of the time favorable to our customer. So for example, sometimes we collect the check, so we receive the customer's check, uh, we deviate from the procedures and laws, and we do that in as a favor for customers. For example, we say we have collected the check after banking hours, right? So in a situation like that, you know that bank is not obliged to, or a bank has no obligations to collect the check after banking hours. In a situation like that, we have, you know that we have deviated from the practices, we have deviated from the established law principles. uh, so what is the reason? We have uh, we have the intention to uh, uh, do a favor or do a favoration to our customers. So in a situation like that, it is not in good faith, because you remember the collecting bank has obligations towards two people, two persons. That is, number one is the customer, the other one is the true owner. So here you have deviated from the procedures uh, to do a favor to the customer. Then you have forget about the true owner, right? His rights you have not thought about. So in a situation like that, uh, good faith is a question of the bank. So that is number one. Number two is negligence. So negligence of the collecting bank is something that we have to prove, very important thing, when we seek the protection of the section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. Negligence towards the true owner is a wrong. When the check is presented for the collection, and if the surrounding circumstances are out of ordinary, which ought to have a doubt in a banker's mind, banker has to make inquiry. That is number one principle that you have to remember when you are collecting a check. What is it? When a check presented for the collection, and if the surrounding circumstances are out of ordinary, which ought to have a doubt in the banker's mind, has to make a inquiry. Bank officials do not have to be detectives, but are expected to act with the reasonable care. Now, when you receive the check from your customer to collect to his account, uh, if the surrounding circumstances are out of ordinary, then you have to make a query. You have to make an inquiry and ask questions from the holder, and you have to get information. And after satisfying yourself only, that you should collect the check. That is the requirement. So, what are the surrounding circumstances uh, uh, that could out suspicious on the mind of the banker, right? The collecting of a check for the amount which are inconsistent with the customer's status of life, right? Now, what is this, right? We say the account holder, he is a, we say executive officer, or we say he is a staff member of a company, right? His salary, we say 50,000 per month. So that company issue a salary check every month, 50,000. Just an example. Every month, 50,000 check from the company, which is his salary. So he comes and deposit that checks to his account in your bank every month. Now you know. So at the time of opening the account, you ask questions, and each and every time that he brings the check, you ask questions from the customer for what reason that you deposit, from where did you get this check, and for what reason you got the check. And he says, this is my salary. So 50,000 every month. 1 month he brings, we say on 1st of April, that he brings a check for 500,000 issued by the same company, right? Issued by the same company. Now, this check, when you get the check, you see it is not the it is not the same amount that he brings every month. So 31st of March he brought, rather he thought 31st of March he brought a check for 500,000. Normally he brings 50,000 rupees of check. Now it is inconsistent with the customer's status of life. So surrounding circumstances are now differ. So therefore, the collecting bank has to be vigilant in a situation like that. You have to make an inquiry. You have to ask questions from the customer. If you are still not satisfied, then you have to contact the drawer. Then only that you have to collect the check. So we say, now we ask questions. The customer say, this is this time we got bonus from my company. So I got 10 months bonus. So he says, so that is why I got this 500,000 check. If you believe, that is fine. But if you don't believe, if you have a doubt, then you have to go another step, and you have to contact the drawer and get a confirmation. But again, remember this one, the law says bank officials do not have to be detectives, but are expected to act with the reasonable care. So what is the amount of reasonable care that you have to perform is up to you, that you have to prove in courts that you were not negligent and you took every precautions or every steps. We satisfy yourself before we collect the check. That is number one. Then the collecting third-party checks where the circumstances warrant inquiry. Sometimes the customers bring third-party checks to deposit to their accounts. When there is when a customer brings third-party checks, when you have any doubt, that you have to make a query and ask questions, and we have to be satisfied before we collect the check that the customer or the holder who brings the check has a true is the true owner, or he has a legal legal title to the check. So for that, you have to make queries and ask questions. Then collecting of checks crossed as account payee only to an account other than the persons persons to whom the check is payable. So as a practice, as you informed last week also, account payee only checks that you collect only to the account holder's account, or the payee's account. But if you collect the check to a third party account, somebody else's account, that then you have to be very careful, because the surrounding circumstances are differ in that case, that you have to ask questions from the customer. But the practice is, as you told last week, the account payee only checks, you don't deposit to others' account. Is that correct? From here, any questions? All clear? Rangana, you're clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right. So then we'll go to the next one, negligence. Negligence of the collecting bank can be divided into two categories. Now, you remember that we have to prove two things. One is that that you collected the checks in good faith or received money in good faith. The other one is without negligence. So this is the part, actually, when we take the defense, section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. The first part, of course, good faith, most of the time the bank can prove. This one, the negligence, that you have to prove that you collected the check without negligence. That is the area or the point that we fail most of the time. So why? We'll see. Negligence of a collecting bank can be divided into two categories. When we say that when you are going to prove that you were not negligence, that part, it has two parts. Number one, the bank being careless when opening the customer's account. Now, when we say that when we are going to prove that you were not negligence, that you have to prove two things. Number one, you were not negligence at the time of opening the account. Now, the second one, the bank has been not careless directly. So the bank has been careless directly connection with the checks received for the collections. Now, when you ask the defense, or when you take the defense of section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, two things that you have to prove, that those are you collected the check in good faith. Second one, without negligence. Then the without negligence part, when you come to that, again it divided into two points. Number one, you have to show or establish to courts that you were not negligent at the time of opening the account. And number two, that you have to prove that you were not negligent at the time of collecting the check. So the issue is with regard to the collecting of a check, but negligence part start from the time of opening the account. That is why I say most of the time when we seek the protection under 82, section 82, the collecting banks fail because there are so many careless things happen at the time of opening the accounts. We have not followed the procedures, we have deviated from the procedures, we have not taken proper documentation. Likewise, there can be a lot of lapses at the time of opening the account. But if there is lapses in the at the time of opening the account, that is the end of the story. That it itself shows that you were negligent. So therefore, the collection, the Section 82 protection, you can't ask at the time of collecting the checks. So, so what are the acts of negligence that we commonly observe of a banks? Failure to attend the accounts opening formalities. That is number one. Failure to obtain references, introductions, failure to obtain names of the employer. It's very important. Sometimes you don't take the employer's name. You don't ask the reason to open the account. Likewise, why it is important? Because if the surrounding circumstances of the check, collecting check, if is doubtful, then you have to make a inquiry. So if you have to be satisfied with the title of the check or the title of the check, whether the holder has a valid title to the check. Then how do you ascertain that? You have to ask question from the holder, and if necessary, that you have to ask from the drawer. Likewise, then if it is if the check the person who brings the check brings a check which is not inconsistent with his normal lifetime, so then in a situation like that, if customer says that if he received the money from his employer, so then you have to make an inquiry from the employer also. Likewise, so therefore at the time of opening the account opening formalities that you have to follow, otherwise it's amount to a negligence. So therefore we have to be very careful at the time of opening the account. Failure to make inquiries when there is a fiduciary relationship between the customer, drawer, and the payee. So the other point, other negligence acts that we commonly observe, when there is a fiduciary relationship between the drawer and the payee, the bank should ask questions and should inquire and has to be satisfied before we collect. For example, if company official, if the drawer is a company, if the payee is a director of the officer of the company, so in a situation like that, it's a fiduciary relationship. You have to make a query. Then, if the drawer is the partnership and the payee is a partner, then again there's a fiduciary relationship. So employer, employee, director of a company. Likewise, there can be a fiduciary relationship. In a situation like that, bank has to make an inquiry. Then failure to make inquiry when the surrounding circumstances of the collecting appears to be unusual, that we discussed before, right? If a customer brings a check which is not inconsistent with his normal lifestyle, life pattern, so then you have to make an inquiry and you have to be satisfied of the title of the check before we collect the check. So those are some commonly seen acts of negligence done by collecting banks. Then furthermore, official checks not to be collected to the personal accounts. That is another area that we see. We sometimes we see the collecting banks collect official checks to personal accounts. Corporate checks not to be collected to the personal accounts. That is another thing that was decided in a case in Underwood versus Bank of Liverpool. Then the principal's checks not to be collected to the personal account of the agent. BOC versus Kulatilaka. That matter, it was decided that the partnership check not to be collected to the personal account of the partner. Bakers versus Barclays Bank case, and the checks for the joint payees not to be collected to the single payee's account. Moser versus Commercial Banking Company of Sydney. So these are some points that you have to remember. Those are recognized or noted as an acts of negligence of the collecting bank. So we can learn a lot of things from these cases. So we should avoid always this type of uh, collections, because those are decided by courts as and recognized as acts of negligence from the collecting bank side. Uh, so any questions from there? Now the conversion part is over. The liability of the conversion I explained you, and the protection 82, section 82, protection, how to seek protection, and what are the things that you have to prove when you seek protection. Those things that you have to be very careful. If you get a question from conversion, it will uh, the scope of the question will start from what is conversion, and it will go up to the protection for the collecting bank. So those things that you have to be very thorough with. So any questions from there? Okay, if you don't have any questions, then I will go to the next one. Uh, the liability on a check. Next one, what we are going to discuss is who has a liability on a check. Now you know when we check when we get a check, uh, theoretically there are three parties involved in the check. That is the drawer, uh, and the drawee. Is always a bank, and the payee. Drawer is the account holder, current account holder of the bank. The drawee is the bank, and the payee is the person who received the who is out to receive the money or the value of the check. So simply theoretically there are three parties involved. Then a person can be held liable on a check only if he has signed the check as a drawer or endorser. Right? We'll take a simple transaction. We say I'm a account holder, current account holder. I issue a check to a friend of mine. Now the check is given to my friend as a we say I use the check and I purchase goods and I issued the check as a payment settlement. So the now check is presented and check is dishonored uh, due to the reason insufficient funds in the account. Then who is liable on the check? The principle is this: on a check, any person is liable if that person has signed the check as the drawer or as the endorser. Important point is that as a drawer, if I have issued the check, I am definitely liable for the value of the check. So the holder can sue me. The person who received the payee or the holder who has deposited the check to the account, if the check is returned, he can sue me because I am the drawer, I have signed the check. Right? We say this check has been negotiated previously in several occasions, and several holders have signed the check as the endorser. There are endorsements that you know what is endorsement. Endorsement that the reverse side of the check, the holder sign and negotiate. When you are negotiating the order check, that's how we have to do, right? So the holder, initially the drawer has to endorse, then the endorsers or the holders, they have to sign the check. So if anyone has signed the check as the endorser, endorser also are liable for the value of the check. So the person who deposited the check to the account can either sue me as the drawer or any endorsers that he can sue. So therefore, it is very important to know that any person who has signed the check as a drawer or as an endorser is liable for the value of the check. Right? Unless you have signed the check, just because you have held the check, you are not liable. You are not liable. If you have signed as a drawer or as an endorser, you are liable. Check can be signed in trade name, but persons are liable as they personally sign the check. For example, if it is a partnership, if one partner is signed, all the partners are liable for the check. If it is a check, we say partnership, proprietorship, the proprietor may have signed the check, or if it is a firm, a partner may have signed a check in the trade name, but the person who signed the check is liable for the check as he signed personally. So therefore, the person who have written the signed the check as a drawer or endorsed the check is liable. Then a drawer or the endorser is precluded from denying to the holder in due course the genuineness and regularity in respect of the drawer's signature and all previous endorsement. A forged or an unauthorized signature on a check has no value and cannot be enforced. This is important point. A drawer or the endorser is precluded from denying to the holder in due course the genuineness and the regularity in respect of the drawer's signature. So drawer cannot say that my signature is irregular or unauthorized if the check is held by holder in due course. So this is very important. I said the holder in due course and holder for value, they have a different rights under the checks. So holder in due course can sue the drawer even the signature is irregular. So the genuineness of the signature cannot be used as a defense against the holder in due course. But of course, against other holders, it is not the case. Then the forged or unauthorized signature is a check on a check has no value and cannot be enforced. If the check is forged, the signature of the drawer is forged, or if it is an unauthorized signature, then the drawer is not liable on the check. But an unauthorized signature on a check can be ratified later. This I believe that we discussed earlier. Also, forged signatures cannot be ratified. For example, if my signature is forged by my friend, I can't ratify that signature. I can't say, okay, I have not signed, but my friend has signed. I ratify the check. So therefore, the check is valid. I can't say that because the forge, once the signature is forged, check is invalid from the beginning. So I can't ratify. The account holder cannot ratify. But if it is an unauthorized signature, it's different. For example, we say that I have authorized my friend, one of my friend, to issue checks from my account. So I have given him a authority. So I have given him the authority to issue checks for 50,000 maximum limit. So he has exceeded the limit and he has issued the check for 75,000. Now it is an unauthorized signature. His authority he has exceeded. So then, in a situation like that, as the account holder, I can ratify the unauthorized signature. So I can say, I ratify the signature of my friend and I say this check is valid. But again, if it is a forged signature, there's no way that I can ratify that. If a bank takes an unreasonable time to pay on a check or to present the payees to the payee's bank, the bank is liable to the customer for the loss result from the delay. So this is another important point that we have to remember. If a bank takes unreasonable time to pay on a check, that is paying back, right? When the check comes to the paying bank, if paying banks take unreasonable time to pay the check or to present the payees back, if you are collecting the check, if you delay the check, delay to present the check to the paying banks, then the bank, paying bank and as well as the collecting banks are responsible or liable to their customer for the loss result of the delay. So not for the value of the check, for the loss you have to pay damages if you delay the payment or if you delay to send the check to the paying bank once you collect the check. So those are the liabilities on the check. Any questions from there? With this, we finish the collecting banks chapter on a checks. Any questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
On this,
Yes, Ranga.
on this last point,
Yeah, the last point.
who is directly liable, the collecting bank or the paying bank, if the unreasonable?
Yeah. Now, in this last point, there are two scenarios. You see, if a bank takes an unreasonable time to pay the check, that means the paying bank. Once you receive the check for the payment, and if you delay the payment, then the paying bank is liable to the customer, right? That is from the paying bank side. On the other hand, if you collect the check as the collecting bank, and if it is not your own check, then you have to send the check for the paying bank for the payment. But if you delay to send the check, so for example, you collect the check today and you didn't send the checks to the collecting bank, you kept the check for 1 week, right? We say because of that, during that 1 week period, the check time expired and now it is a stale check, 6-month lapse. Now what happened? If you send the check now, the paying bank will not pay. That is a loss to the customer. So customer then can sue the collecting bank for the undue delay, right? That is from the collecting bank side. If you collect the check and you promptly send the checks to the paying bank, and paying bank without paying the check, if they kept the check for another 1 week and during that period, if the check got stale, then it is the responsibility of the paying bank. The paying bank has to pay the damages to the customer. So those are two different liabilities on the collecting bank and paying bank. Undue delay on collecting, undue delay on paying. Clear, Ranga?
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll go to the next one. Paying bank. Now we are going to discuss the paying banks chapter on checks and check clearance. Why? Payment of a check. The bank is bound to honor the customer's check when they are duly presented for the payment. If they are if they are duly filled and in the proper form. So this you may remember we discussed previously also. If the check is presented, duly presented, and if it is duly filled in the proper form, then the bank is obliged to pay. When we say the duly presented, you may remember duly presented means if it is presented to the same branch and if it is presented during the banking hours, that is duly presented check. Then if it is duly filled, that means check without any alteration, uh, has filled all the places that they have to fill, and it is in the correct form, printed check form. So then it is a complete check. Then the paying bank has an obligation to pay the check. However, the bank should not honor the check even though the check is duly presented, even though the check is complete. The paying bank should not pay the check on the following occasions. What are those? When the customer is deceased or bankrupt. Now the customer has issued the check and the check has been negotiated in several times. We say the customer has issued the check last week, and the check is now circulated. Those check has been negotiated so many times, and now it has come for the payment. At the time of at the time the check comes for the payment, customer is deceased. So you are aware, once the customer is deceased, all accounts of the customer you have to freeze until you get a court order from a testamentary action. You have to freeze the account. So once the account is freeze, the bank cannot do any credit or debit. So therefore, the bank should not uh, pay the check if the customer is deceased, or if the customer is bankrupt. If court decide the customer is bankrupt and such order comes to the bank should not pay any check from the customer's account, previously issued checks, when you get a court order like that. Then the second one, when the customer has stopped the payment. So that means countermanding. Customer has issued the check. Later on, the customer has stopped the payment. As you are aware, the countermanding can be given verbally, but you have to take that instruction in writing of the customer, also for the protection of the paying bank. However, if customer has stopped the payment, the bank should not pay. When no sufficient funds in the account. So obviously, if sufficient funds are not available in the account, the bank can dishonor the check and return the check with the narration, prefer to draw over or insufficient funds, if you have not provided him a overdraft limit. So then that is number 3. Number 4, when there is a legal bar or legal barrier. So as we discussed before, there can be a court order seizing the customer's account, or there can be a enjoining order against the bank by paying the check. Likewise, there can be many legal barriers depriving the bank from the paying the check. So in a situation like that, the bank should not pay the check even though it is presented and duly filled. Then the banker has a knowledge of fraud or breach of trust. That is number 5, very important, right? When a check comes to your hand for the payment, if you have any knowledge of fraud or breach of trust in a situation like that, the banker should not pay. For example, we say the customer it's a corporate account, corporate current account. So the authorized signatory is the accountant of the company, and you have the knowledge that recently the company has found that the accountant has defrauded the company money. So therefore, they are now carrying on an investigation on this incident. So you have the knowledge of fraud of the account. Now, if you get a check for the payment from that company account in a situation like that, even though there is no legal barrier, even though there is no court order, even the customer has not stopped the check, the bank should not pay the check without getting a confirmation from the account holder, because you have the knowledge of fraud or breach of trust. In a situation like that, it is the obligation of the paying bank to get a confirmation from the drawer before we pay. So with the confirmation, of course, pay, or otherwise we should not pay. So that is about the payment of the check. Any questions from here? Okay, so then I will go to the next one, right? Now we are supposed to, as a paying bank, we are supposed to pay the check to the correct person, right? To the intended person, we have to pay. If we pay the money to the intended person or to the true owner, then the check will discharge. Now, for example, we say, I issue a check addressed to, we say, Nimal Pereira. So, payee is the Nimal Pereira. Nimal Pereira brings the check and present to the paying bank, that is my bank. The bank pays money to Nimal Pereira. Now the check is discharged. Obligation on the check is discharged because the money is paid to the correct person, intended person. But sometimes, if the check is paid to a wrong party, check will not discharge. For example, I say, I have issued a check for Nimal Pereira, and Sunil Pereira has got the check, and he has impersonated to the bank and shown the documents to prove that he's not he's Nimal Pereira and he has got the money, right? Mr. Sunil Pereira has got the money by impersonating him as Nimal Pereira. So now the money has not, or the value of the check has not gone to the correct person or intended person. So the check is not discharged. The payment is not correct. We say it is a wrong payment or it is a mistaken payment. This is the word that we use it's a legal word that we use to recognize or to recognize a wrong payment made by a bank. Mistaken payments. So mistaken payments is that we can interpret the mistaken payment as payment done by number A due to the mistaken of facts or due to mistake of law. So mistaken payment can be occur in two occasions. By mistake of facts. Now, for example, in this scenario, the bank has done a mistake by identifying Sunil Pereira as Nimal Pereira. So that is a mistake of facts. You have not identified the correct person. Identification is wrong. So it's a mistake of facts. And you have paid to a wrong party, that is to Sunil Pereira. So it is a mistaken payment. Mistaken payment done by mistake of facts. Right? Then there can be a mistaken payment due to mistake of law. Now, for example, we say check is issued by a customer, and the check has been negotiated in so many occasions, and now the check is stale, expired, right? So the banks has not observed the check is stale. The person who collected the check or the paid the check has not recognized it is not a it's not a valid check because as per the law it's a stale check. So banks still paid. The money has been paid to the correct party, but the payment is wrong because the check is stale. So it's payment done due to a mistake of law. So it is a mistaken payment. So therefore, the payment or the check is not discharged. So those are the two occasions or two scenarios that we can recognize as mistaken payments. So that is payment due to mistake of facts, Number 2, the payment due to mistake of law. Okay, any questions from here up to now? Right? If you take any mistaken payment, so any mistaken payment, that mistaken payment either due to the mistaken of facts or mistake of law. So those are the 2 categories that we can commonly observe when it comes to mistaken payment. Then what is the paying bank risk and the liability on the mistaken payment or payments rather? The payment without mandate. If the check is not paid to the genuine payee or to the holder under the payee's endorsement, the check is not paid to the order of the designated person. Therefore, the check is not discharged. So remember, if the check has been paid, if the check has not been paid to the genuine payee, right, or to the holder under the payee's endorsement, the check is not paid to the order or the designated person. Therefore, the check is not discharged. The payment is a mistaken payment. So therefore, the paying bank is liable. If the bank pays the check other than the true owner, the bank is liable to the true owner, unable to debit the customer's account. This is very important. If the bank has paid to a wrong party, the bank is liable to 2 people, 2 persons. One is the true owner, the other one, the customer, the drawer. Right? Customer's account, the paying bank cannot debit. The customer's account, you have to credit again. You have to credit again. Then you have to go behind the person who received the money, and you have to recover the money from the person who received. So that is very important when it comes to the paying of a check. Then number 2, forged or unauthorized signature. What is the liability of the paying bank on a forged or unauthorized signature check? The bank has no mandate to debit the customer's account. Very important. If the check is unauthorized, or if the signature of the drawer is forged, the bank cannot debit the account holder's account, customer's account. If you have paid the money by debiting the customer's account, first thing that you have to do is return the money to the customer's account and recover the money from the person who received the money. But there is an exception. But the customer is stopped from setting up the forgery of lack of authority. Number 1A, as a result of express or implied representation. As a result of express or implied representation. So if customer has represented that expressly or impliedly that the person who has the authority to sign the check, then the customer is stopped. He can't deny the validity of the check, of the signature. Of course, again, it is only for the unauthorized signatures. Customer has expressed or impliedly represented the check, the signature is valid. So then in a situation like that, he is stopped. Case is Brown versus Westminster Bank. Then as a result of breach of customer's duty. So if customer has breached the duty of Greenwood, then in a situation like that, the customer cannot seek any remedy, or he's stopped from denying the validity of the signature. Example, Greenwood versus Martins. You may remember that Mrs. Greenwood forged the signature of Mr. Greenwood. Mr. Greenwood didn't inform the bank. So then it was held when the customer is breached the contract, breach the customer's duty, then the customer can't say the signature is forged and the bank is liable. So in a situation like that, the customer is stopped from denying the authority or the denying the signature. Otherwise, what is the situation? If the check is signature of the check is forged, or if it is unauthorized signature, the bank cannot debit the customer's account. Bank has to return the money to the customer's account and has to go behind the person who received the money. Uh, Altered checks, if a check is altered, it is void. Materially altered checks are void. If the bank honors a check which has been materially altered, has no right to debit the customer's account. Example, Yorkshire Bank versus Lloyd Banks. So remember, if the check is materially altered, check is not valid. If bank has no right to debit the customer's account, if customer has paid the altered check, if bank has paid the altered check by debiting the customer's account, the bank has to return that money to the customer's account and has to recover the money from the person who received the money. But there is an exception. Holder in due course may enforce any altered check in accordance with the original tenor where the alteration is not apparent. So what happened if the alteration is not visible? Holder in due course can perform the check. So in other words, if the check is paid to the holder in due course, and if the alterations are not visible, that payment is valid. That is why I said the holder in due course and holder for value, they have special rights. On the other hand, the banks also can take the advantage of that. If the payment is done to the holder in due course, and if the check is altered, but the alteration is not visible, the payment is valid. So therefore, the bank has the check is then considered as discharge. So bank has no liability. Otherwise, if the check is altered, the bank has no right to debit the customer's account. So up to now, any questions? Forged signature, altered checks, the paying bank's liability. Okay, no questions. Right, in that case, I'll go to the next one. So what are the protections of the paying bank? What are the protections available to the paying bank? Number one, the estoppel. Estoppel, in Sinhala, the word that we use for this estoppel is pratibandhanaya. Estoppel. Customer stopped from denying the signature or the validity of the check. If customer is stopped from relying on the alteration, if it was facilitated by the way he drew the check. Example, Macmillan case. You may remember this customer. He wrote the check by keeping spaces and blank spaces in the check. Then the holder altered the check and presented for the payment, and bank paid the check, altered check. So in a scenario like that, it was decided the customer, the account holder, is stopped from claiming the money because he has facilitated for forgery by the way he wrote the check. So therefore, the liability is not with the paying bank in a situation like that. That is the Macmillan case. Then payment to the holder in due course. The other defense that we can take, as we discussed before, if bank has paid the altered check and if it is paid to a holder in due course, then the payment is valid. The bank then the bank is entitled to debit the customer's account as per the original mandate. So that is number 2, payment for the holder in due course. Then third one, paying bank's protection is third one we can take the protection, ratification. Ratification means if it is an unauthorized signatory, or if the signatory has exceeded the authority limit, in a situation like that, if the customer has ratified the signature later, then the customer cannot later deny the signature, then the bank is entitled to debit the customer's account and pay the check. Where the agent exceed his authority in drawing the check, his act may be ratified or adopted by the principal, the account holder later. Then the customer is precluded from disputing the paying bank right to debit the customer's account. So the customer, if customer has adopted or accepted the signature, unauthorized signature, then after the payment done by the bank by debiting his account, the account holder, the customer, cannot later deny the signature. The case is London International Trust Limited versus Barclays Bank. The bank made the checks with one signature, then the company ratified the signature, then the director board didn't took any action against that. So later on, they claim that the bank has no right to debit the company account, which was rejected. That argument was rejected by court of law and said once the signature is ratified, then the bank, the customer is precluded from denying the validity of the signature. So that is number third is ratification that we can take as a defense in a paying bank. So what are the three defenses that we can take as a paying bank? One is the estoppel of the customer, Macmillan case. Number 2, payment to the holder in due course. Number 3, ratification, that is unauthorized signatures. If it is ratified by the customer later, then he is precluded from denying the payment. So those are the three protections available to the paying bank under the banking law. So any questions from there? Okay, since you have no questions, then I will go to the next one. Right to recover the money paid by mistake. Right to recover the monies paid by mistake. Now, as I told you before, if a paying bank has paid the money or the value of the check by mistake of facts or by mistake of law, the payment is then called a mistaken payment. So then the bank has to return that money to the customer, and bank has to recover the money from the person who received the money receiver. So basically, in other words, the bank cannot say the customer that we have paid the money, that you have to go behind the person who received the money and collect it. No, it is not not what you have to do. The paying bank has to do. Paying bank has to return the money to the customer's account, and the bank has to go behind the person who received the money and collect the payment. So under the equitable principles, the bank is entitled to step into the shoes of the customer to the extent that the customer has derived some benefit of the payment made. So what happens in a situation like this? If the payment is made by the bank mistakenly, then the bank will step into the customer's shoes, and the bank can go behind the person who received the money and collect the money from the person. So basically, in other words, if the payment is a mistaken payment, first thing that bank has to do, return that money to the customer. So then there is a loss to the bank. That loss, the bank has to recover from the person who received the money. So bank will step into the shoes of the customer and will go behind the person who received the money and recover that money by suing him on the principle of subrogation. This is called principle of subrogation. The principle, this principle applies when the bank has paid the checks which bears forged signature or less than required number of signatures or countermand checks. So if bank has mistakenly paid a forged signature check or unauthorized signature check or a countermand check, in a situation like that, the paying bank can apply the principle of subrogation and sue the money receiver and recover that money after giving the money to the customer's account. So that is number one, principle of subrogation. Then the bank's remedy for the payment done on mistaken of facts of law. If the payment has been made by the bank for the checks by mistake of facts or by mistake of law, in such situation, the bank cannot debit the customer's account. Then the bank's remedy is to seek recovery of money from the payee on the basis of mistaken payment or unjust enrichment. So the other principle is, if a if a bank has paid the money to a wrong party by mistake of law or by mistake of facts, in a situation like that, the second principle apply. The bank can sue the receiver, money receiver, or from the payee on the basis of recovery of mistaken payment, or we call it unjust enrichment. That is number two. First one, subrogation. Number two, unjust enrichment. So from the person who unjustly enriched by other person's money, that is the person who received the money. So from him, the bank can recover that money on the basis of unjust enrichment. That is number two, principle number two. Any questions up to now? Okay, what is the basis of the unjust enrichment action? Unjust enrichment of the payee at the expense of the payer. Unjust enrichment of the payee at the expenses of the payer. What does it mean? Now, payee has no legal right to receive this money. In other words, the money received by him, the payee, is not due legally. So however, the payer has paid mistakenly, and as a result of that mistake, the payee has got unjustly enriched. So therefore, the bank can recover that money on unjust enrichment action. The payer's mistake provides enrichment in the payee unjust at the expense of the payer. So therefore, it can be reversed. Since the mistake, the payer, that is the bank, has no intention to transfer the benefit of the payee. So when we are doing a mistaken payment, the bank has no intention to pay that money to a wrong party. So there's no intention to give the benefit to the payee of the payment. So therefore, that is from one hand. On the other hand, the payee has no legal right or legal means to receive that money. It is not justly due to the payee. So therefore, it has to be reversed, and it can be reversed. The basis of the action is reversal of unjust enrichment. So that is the basis of this action, unjust enrichment. So that is about the unjust enrichment. Then payment on a forged instrument, forge of the drawer's signature or forge of endorsement. There can be two types of forgeries or forged signatures in a check. Number one, the drawer's signature or signature or the endorsement, forged endorsement. The material alteration of the check is including the original amount payable and or alterations of the name of the payee. There can be a material alteration of the amount or the payee's name. So these types of instruments are called forged instruments. Right to recover the money paid by mistake of forged signature of the customer. National Westminster Banks versus Barclays. It was held that by paying a check which bears a forged signature of the customer, the bank does not make representation that the signature is genuine. So it is like this. Once a check is presented, if the signature of the drawer is forged, right? The paying bank has to satisfy the genuineness of the signature before they pay. So once you get a check, so you see the check and then you compare the signature with the specimen signature available with the bank. Then if you are satisfied the signature is genuine or signature is similar to the specimen signature, then only we pay. The question is, once you satisfy the signature is correct, can you later say the signature is forged, so therefore check is not valid, the payment is not valid, it's a mistaken payment. So question is whether the bank is stopped from denying the validity or the genuineness of the signature once they confirm the signature by paying. So that is the issue here. However, it was decided the payment of the check is not a representation of the genuineness of the signature. Now we know we are not expert of handwriting, right? So we are just looking at the signature on the check and we are comparing the signature of the check or the instrument with the specimen signature given in the system or given in the signature card, right? From our naked eye, we compare and we decide or we come to a conclusion the signature of the check or the instrument is tally with the signature of the signature card. So then only we decide to pay. So the accuracy or the genuineness, we have not decided by using techniques or technology. So because that we are not expert of handwriting. So if this is referred to a handwriting expert and the expert says the signature is not genuine, it is a forged signature, by using his technical knowledge, by his using his techniques and technology, he decides. So in a situation like that, can we now say, after paying the customer, after satisfying ourselves, since we have paid, can we say now the check is not valid and the signature is not genuine or it is forged? So therefore the bank is not anyway stopped from recovering the money paid by mistake if it is a forged signature. remember again, we are not detectives, but we have to be very vigilant. However, if the check signature of the check is forged, that means the check is not valid. We have to return the money to the customer. However, we can recover that money from the person who received the money. That bank does not owe a duty of care of a third party in a situation like that. The bank can go behind the payee, the person who received the money, and we can collect the money from the receiver after giving the money to the account holder. That is, uh, you have to remember, uh, that is, the bank is not stopped from recovering the money. It is bank is not precluded from denying the genuineness of the signature after payment is made. So that is decided on National Westminster Bank versus Barclays Bank matter. So that was the principle decided there. So any questions up to now? So okay, so then we covered the checks, the latter part of the lesson. Today we discuss the collecting banks liability, and the defense available to the collecting banks. The wrongs can happen from the collecting banks. That is about the conversion and the breach of contract, and the defense, section 82 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. Then we talked about the liability of the paying bank, and we discuss about the mistaken payment, and we discuss about the recovery of mistaken payment, and the principles apply for when we are recovering money on mistaken payment. So those with those we have covered checks part. Uh, so if you have any questions, then you can, even next week you can ask. Uh, so we have to start a new lesson today. So we'll have 15 minutes break. We'll uh, oh yeah, what's the time now? It's 10:40. Okay. We'll have a 15 minutes break and we'll start afterwards. Right. We'll start the new topic that we are going to discuss next. That is, we are going to discuss about the debt recovery process. Actually, this date in this slide is not correct. It is updated anyway. Uh, so we are going to discuss about the debt recovery process and the debt recovery special laws. So that is the idea of this. We'll see the first slide. Uh, when we are doing banking business, uh, one of the main functions that we perform under the banking business, we lend money. So that is one of the main, or that is the main income resource of the bank. So we lend money, we take deposits from the public, and we lend those money to the public and other entities on higher rates, and we generate income. Uh, so when we are lending money, there are two types of lendings. We lend on securities and we lend without securities. So therefore, we can categorize those facilities into two categories: secured facilities and unsecured facilities. So secured facilities, I have given in this slide in the left hand side, may commonly use secured facilities type. I have mentioned here. Those are facilities secured by guarantee bonds, FDs, mortgages, likewise. Then we have pledge loans where we grant facilities or we grant loan on by pledging the goods. Then leasing facilities we provide to the customers by keeping the lease item or lease vehicle as a security or collateral. Then hire purchase, another types of facility that we provide uh, under hire purchase agreement. Again, the collateral is the equipment, hire purchase equipment. Then gold loans or pawn loans that we uh, grant, keeping or owning the gold articles. Those are types of some common types of or generally used secured facilities by banks. To the other side, the right hand side of the slide I have mentioned here, some unsecured facilities. Example, casual overdraft facilities. As you know, the casual overdraft facilities we provide to the customers without pre-arrangement, without signing any agreement or written contract. When a check comes to the account of the bank, customer's account, uh, when the sufficient funds is not available, by looking at the customer's previous transaction and considering uh, the relationship that the bank has with the customer or the customer has with the bank and trustworthiness of the customer, the bank can decide whether that you want to pay the check without prior arrangement or without collateral. So those types of overdraft we called casual overdraft, case by case or check by check. The bank on his discretion can overdraw the customer's account and pay the check. So then the customer is obliged to pay the overdraft balance together with the interest. That is accepted practice by law also, developed by the bankers and accepted by court of law. Then TOD, temporary overdraft. For a short period of time we provide customers a temporary overdraft with a limit, most of the occasion with documents, agreements, overdraft agreement, but uh, most of the time without any security. So then short term loans and personal loans, the next category. We provide customers short-term loans without any security based on the creditworthiness and trustworthiness of the customers. Sometimes we take securities and sometimes we don't take. Then credit cards is another types of facility that we provide to the customer without any collaterals. So the customer enjoy the credit card um, without any collateral and of course with a limit. Those are some types of uh, unsecured facilities that we provide to the customers. Then, uh, as you are aware now, our business is we lend money uh, and generate income. One of the most important uh, activities of the banking business is to recover the lendings or like recover the loans or recover the facilities that we lend to the customers. Unless that you are aware, you are capable of recovering the facilities which you gave to the customers, you will not survive in the banking or business. Because for example, if you provide 100 loans, if your customers default higher rates, for example we say 20 loans he defaults, customers default, and if you are not able to recover, so then you will not be able to survive in the business for a long period. So then this is called Npl ratio. If most of your facilities goes to non-performing category, that means you are in serious trouble. So there should be a recovery process, money recovery process inside the bank, and as well as you should be able to have, you should have uh, uh, a team to recover the money due from legal process. Otherwise, we will face a lot of difficulties in the long run of the business, because you are lending depositors money and you are obliged to pay the depositors when they demand. So you can face a lot of liquidity issues unless you have a good debt recovery mechanism inside the bank. uh, Inside the bank. And when it comes to recoveries, loan recoveries on facilities, credit recoveries, basically those recovery process uh, divide into two categories, or two stages rather. That is pre-litigation stage and a litigation stage. The pre-litigation stage is handled by non-lawyers or the bank officers, and during this period the bank officers and sometimes agencies, outsource agencies, they try to recover the loans from the customer, dues from the customers, uh, dues from the customers. Please excuse me. Sorry about that. So we were talking about the debt recovery process. As I told you, there are two stages in the debt recovery process: pre-litigation and litigation process. At the pre-litigation stage, the banks are trying to recover the loans, the credit facilities, through the non-lawyers, and that is recovery team, and also sometimes through agencies, outsource agencies. Uh, then afterwards, if it is not possible to recover the loans from non-legal activities, then you transfer the files to the legal department, or you retain a lawyers and you go through the litigation process to recover. So uh, there are two ways, or two basically two procedures the banks apply to recover loans, litigation process or the legal process. There are two main legal processes. One is litigation process, that is through courts that we recover loans on facilities. The other one is known as parate procedure, where some banks, they have the right to auction the mortgage property without going to courts. So those are the main two processes that we use in legal processes that we use to recover loans. So that is the outline of this lecture. So we'll now go into details. We'll take uh, first we'll take a regular money recovery action. So under this topic that we are going to discuss, legal process of debt recovery. So the pre-litigation part we are not going to touch here. So the litigation part only we are talking about, and the procedures and the principles and law apply in debt recovery under legal process. So we'll first of all we under this again we have to remember or we have to study for your exam mainly two processes, that is debt recovery act number 2 of 1990, commonly known as DR actions, that you have to study, and then again debt recovery special provisions act number 4 of 1990, that is parade procedure. So that's another special law applicable to recoveries. So those two mainly you have to study. But before we go into the special laws, it is always better to have an idea, basic idea of the regular procedure. Without having a knowledge of regular procedure, it's very difficult to understand special procedures. So therefore, we'll start with the regular procedure. First, we'll start with regular money recovery action. So then again, if you have any doubt or any if you need any clarification or more explanation on this procedure, please then and there ask the question, and I will explain you. Otherwise, since this is legal procedure, legal process, sometimes you will find difficulty to understand. Uh, but you are welcome to interact me and ask questions and understand the process correctly. Or otherwise, you will feel a difficulty when you are discussing special laws. So first, we'll take regular action. And a regular action, regular money recovery action, we'll take an example and discuss, then you will easily understand. We take a facility, uh, we take personal loan facility, first personal loan with a guarantor, personal guarantors, right? Now the customer has defaulted, the pre-litigation recovery process failed, customer didn't pay, guarantors didn't respond. So now you want to initiate legal action. So the first, when you refer to the matter to the legal action, first of all, remember the first step of all recovery actions, all recovery action through litigation or through legal process, start with the letter of demand. So once the matter goes to the comes to the legal process, first thing, the bank or the lender has to send a letter of demand. Letter of demand is a document. It's a legal document uh, sent generally by a lawyer, right? Generally by a lawyer demanding uh, the amount due to the bank or the institution. So it has to be very carefully worded, or otherwise, if the letter of demand is wrong, your whole action can be collapsed, because the letter of demand is like the foundation of the building. So therefore, it has to be, as I told you, very carefully you have to word this, because some instances that I have observed, when they refer the matters to me, sometimes they send the letter of demand. Sometimes the bank officers or the company officers, they prepare the letter of demand and they send the letter of demand without knowing legal principles, right? There are legal principles that you have to consider when you are demanding money. So if you are demanding money from the guarantors, it's a different format. And if you are demanding money on the mortgage, it's a different format, and there are words that you have to use. And likewise, there are different formats for each and every product, or each and every document, or each and every agreement that you have to word the letter of demand in such a manner. Otherwise, the letter of demand will not be correct. So the other thing is, when you send a letter of demand, unless you withdraw the letter of demand, you can't send another letter of demand. So that is another practice that I have observed in many organizations. The bank officers or the recovery officers, sometimes they say to put a pressure on the customer to send, they send letter of demand. It's not like that. Letter of demand is the first step of the legal action. As I told you before, once the letter of demand sent, your clock start ticking, because as per the law, there's a prescription period to file action. There's a prescription period. There's an act called prescription ordinance. So this prescription ordinance says within a certain period of time, the actions has to be filed. For example, if it is a accident case, to claim damages within 1 year, that you have to file action. If it is a testamentary action, Civil Procedure Code says within 3 months' time of the death, customer or the legal heirs has to file action. If it is a unwritten contract, within 3 years from the breach, we have to file action. And also, if it is a written contract, within 6 years' time from the breach of the contract, we have to file action. We have to demand and file action. So likewise, those are some examples that I gave you. Likewise, there are prescriptive period or prescribed period in the prescription ordinance in other or other laws prescribed to file action. So therefore, it is number one that you have to remember. There is a prescribed period to file action. Once the prescribed period is expired, bank or the institution cannot file action. Then that you have to forget about the loan. How much is the loan is immaterial. So that will be the end of the story. So therefore, it is very important. Another important factor that we have to remember. Sometimes we observe some departments or some branches of the banks, they keep the files with them. They're trying to recover the loans for years and years because they don't want to refer the matters to the legal department or the recovery department. They are trying to sort the matters out from their end. But again, remember, once the default is made, then from there the prescription starts. So therefore, you have to take immediate action to recover, initiate legal action as soon as possible. Always get an advice from the legal department or lawyer regarding the prescriptive period. Don't keep the file years and years in a branch once it is defaulted. So first step, as I told you, that we have to send the letter of demand. Once the letter of demand sent, we normally give 14 days to the customer and to the guarantors also to settle the loan or the outstanding. Then if customer or the guarantors not obliged to the letter of demand, then the next step is we file action in court of law. When we say filing action, we basically file some documents. One is called a plaint. In Sinhala, we call it paminilla, right? We file a plaint. That is our complaint in writing. There is a procedure or there is a format that we have to use. So basically, plaint is filed by lawyers. So they prepare the plaint and they file the plaint in court of law together with the documents, annexures, agreements. Likewise, they whatever the documents they annex to the plaint and they file. So when it comes to filing of action, documentation part is very very important and it is essential. So that is one thing that we have to remember. We should have a complete documents. We should have a good documentation procedure. Otherwise, if we have incomplete documents or incorrect documents, then that documents are useless, that we can't use to file litigation action based on those documents. For example, if the guarantor has not signed the guarantee bond, that is the end of the story. So we can't consider that as a guarantee bond, right? Or sometimes you may see that the witnesses have not signed the guarantee bond. Likewise, agreement, offer letters have not accepted. Likewise, there can be a lot of lapses in the documents. In that case, those documents cannot be used in litigation action. So therefore, always keep that in your mind. All the documents must be completed before you disburse the loan. So after disbursing the loan, it is not possible, or in other words, it's impossible to get the customer's signature for any documents. That is our experience. So therefore, before we disburse the loan or facility, whatever the documents that you have to complete before, or otherwise you will face a lot of difficulties at the time of recoveries. So then after filing the action in court of law in a regular action, that is the plaint and the annexures, then the court will issue summons to the defendants. So once the action is filed, the party who filed the action is called plaintiff and the other party is called defendant. In Sinhala we call Paminilikaru and the other party is called Vittikaru. Defendant is called Vittikaru. In a recovery action, the plaintiff is the bank is the plaintiff. We file action and we file action against the borrower and also guarantor. So the guarantor, borrower and the guarantor are the defendants. So then after filing the action, court issues summons to the defendants. Summons means in single we call it sitasi. Summons is a notice issued by courts addressed to the defendants, informing them there is a case filed against them and giving a notice to appear in courts and file their answer. So basically, together with the summons, court send a copy of the plaint and the annexures or the marked documents to the defendants. Then in the summons, they mention a date where the customer or the defendant should come to courts. That is called summons returnable date. Summons returnable date. So on the summons returnable date, the customer or the borrower and the guarantors, if any guarantors are there, they have to file their answer. They can file their answer by retaining a lawyer, or even if they want, they can file personally. But most of the occasion, 99% in cases or 99.99 cases, the customers they file they file their answers through lawyers. Then the answer also, there is a format that we have to use in court of law, and together with the answer, the customer or the borrower or the guarantors can annex documents that he relied on. Answer means the customer or the borrower or the guarantor has to answer to the plaint filed by the bank. So then after the defendant filed the answer, the case then can fix for trial by the courts. And trial means the court has to decide the case by by taking evidence of the parties, and after that the court will give the judgment based on the evidence given in courts. So once the answer is filed, then at the trial, uh, first the plaintiff has to give evidence. That is, the bank first has to give evidence, and the bank has to prove the the plaint, the averments, or the what you have said in the plaint, that you have to prove by evidence. Evidence means that evidence, oral evidence, and documentary evidence that you have to provide to courts. Oral evidence means the bank officers has to go to courts and get into the witness box and give evidence. Basically, when you are giving evidence, uh, there are three stages in giving evidence. First, your lawyer asks questions from you. That is called examination in chief. Then after that, the other side lawyer, that is the defendant's lawyer, can cross-examine the witness. So he will ask questions from you. So that is called cross-examination. After that, again, the plaintiff lawyer get a chance to ask questions and clarify certain doubtful areas. So that is called re-examination. So that likewise, now the plaintiff has to give evidence. Plaintiff, that is banks officers, have to give evidence. Bank officers, accountants, recovery officers, they have to give evidence verbally, and also they have to produce the documents, original documents to courts, including the account statements, to prove the case. If you don't have the original case, that will be uh, 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 that will be a very disadvantage, because unless the original documents are there, uh, that your case can be dismissed. Uh, so therefore, it is very important to have original documents, especially when it comes to uh, the guarantee bonds, mortgage bonds, loan agreements, all those documents that you have to bring the original documents. Photocopies are not allowed to mark. So therefore, if you have lost the guarantee bond or mortgage bond or loan agreement, then your litigation process can be failed because of that. So then, after giving the evidence by the plaintiff and its uh, witnesses, then the defendant, if he wants, he can give evidence, and he can call further evidence or further the witnesses to give evidence on behalf of him. So then the lawyers of the bank get a chance to cross-examine the witnesses of the defendant, and after that, after getting the evidence of both parties, that is the plaintiff and the defendant, judge uh, will give the judgment based on the evidence. So if judge is satisfied with the evidence provided by the bank, that is the plaintiff, and if he or she thinks that the bank has proved the case, uh, uh, prove the uh, case and not the defendant, in a case in a situation like that, the judge will give the judgment in favor of the bank. Or on the other way, on the defendant, that is the borrower, has proved his case by evidence and documents. Then if the judge is satisfied that the defendant is correct and he has proved the case, then the plaintiff case will be dismissed, and the plaintiff will not be able to recover anything from the customer. So there are instances that the case is dismissed due to technical errors, or due to lack of documents, or sometimes due to the errors made by the witnesses. So therefore, it's very important when you are giving evidence, you should know, you should be thorough with the products, you should be thorough with the banking procedures, and also you should be thorough with the accounts. You should be able to explain those in the court of law by way of evidence. That is about the judgment. If we get a judgment in favor of the bank, then what is the next step? So we say the judge decide the case in favor of the bank. Then afterwards, the plaintiff can request the court to execute the decree. Execute the decree means the fiscal officer or the registrar of the uh, courts will seize the properties of the defendants, that is the borrower and the guarantors. If we have a judgment in favor of the bank, the fiscal officers will go to the residence of the borrower and the guarantors, and they can seize the properties. So they can seize movable and immovable properties of the borrower and as well as the guarantors. Then afterwards, court or the fiscal officer can fix a auction to auction the properties of the guarantors and borrower. That is called a fiscal auction. Fiscal auction is a public auction. Before the fiscal auction, they put a newspaper advertisement and banners and posters, and afterwards the registrar or the fiscal officer, basically it's not the fiscal officer, registrar, most of the time the registrar is a fiscal also. The registrar of the courts conduct the fiscal auction. So at the auction, the goods seized by the fiscal officer of the defendants will be sold in a public auction. So from that auction, the money collected through the fiscal auction, the proceeds of the auction will be bring to the courts and deposit in the case. So from there, the plaintiff, that is the bank, can claim the money due to the bank and recover the money from the collected money from the auction, and not only the debt, the cost of litigation also can be recovered from this process. So that we have to make an application to court of law. Then the court will release that money to the plaintiff in order to recover the debt and the cost. So that is the regular money recovery procedure, regular money recovery litigation procedure through courts. So any questions from here, or any clarification is needed, please you can ask. Any questions?
So what if the defendant does not answer to the summons?
Okay, good question. Right. I said when the summons goes to the defendant, the defendant has to come and file their answer. So your question is, if customer or the borrower or the defendant didn't come, what is the procedure if he didn't answer? So in a situation like that, that the plaintiff has to make a request to the courts, and the court will fix the matter ex parte. We call it ex parte. Ex parte means without the defendant, by getting the evidence of the plaintiff only, the court will decide the case. In a situation like that, most of the time, we say 99%, or we say 99%, the ex parte judgment will be in favor of the bank. So that doesn't mean 100% sure, right? So even ex parte judgment can be go against the bank because it against depends on the evidence and the documents that you produce at the ex parte trial. So if the defendants are not present and not answered to the plaint, so matter will go ex parte. That means one party, that is without them, with the evidence of the plaintiff only, the matter can be decided and the judgment, ex parte judgment will be given. Then afterwards, the procedure is same. Execution of decree, go and seize the property, then auction the property, and then recover the loan. So that is the answer for your question. Dilshani, are you clear?
Yes, sir, I got it. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, for the clarification, if
Yes.
there's a mistake in the letter of the what do you call that?
Mistake in
initially, I mean that's initially what we are sending a letter for demanding this thing, the letter of demand, right? Yeah,
yes.
LD, letter of demand. Is there any? I mean, there is not in order. Sometimes maybe the incorrect in facts and figures. So,
Yes.
is there any area to rectify those area, or can we? Is there any possibility to send again this letter of demand?
Yeah, yeah. As I told you, Mr. Rajakaruna, yeah, there is a possibility that you have to withdraw the previous letter of demand and send a fresh letter of demand. So there is a possibility for that, but remember, the prescription is the issue. Once you send the letter of demand, once you send the letter of demand, the prescription starts. So therefore, it is always prudent to study the file and draft the letter of demand correctly. That is why I advise not the bank officers not to not to send the letter of demand. You can send the reminders and other letters or official letters, but not the letter of demand, because the letter of demand has to be carefully worded, carefully drafted after perusing the documents and the file. So based on the available documents and based on the available collaterals, only the letter of demand has to be drafted. So, Mr. Rajakaruna, the answer is yes, there is a possibility that we can withdraw the letter of demand and we can send a fresh letter of demand. But again, the prescription, ticking of prescription, start from the letter of demand, first letter of demand. And also, the other thing is the letter of demand, the incorrect letter of demand, the defendant can bring to courts as a evidence to show what do you call our competency or our negligence from the bank side. So that is a bad image for the bank. So therefore, yes, even though it is possible, we have to avoid that. We have to send the correct letter of demand at the first instance. Yes, it is possible. We can withdraw the letter of demand and we can send another letter of demand.
So how we are going to withdraw same? I mean, so by sending a letter, also sending another letter of demand. How we are going to withdraw same?
Yeah, not just sending another letter of demand. If you send a letter of demand without withdrawing the letter of demand, that is wrong. Then the defendant can take a position saying that there is no proper demand. So therefore, if you find the first letter of demand is wrong, then what you have to do from your lawyers, they have to send a letter withdrawing the letter of demand, previous letter of demand. That is a separate letter. So after withdrawing the letter of demand, we can send a fresh letter of demand. So basically what we do, we send the withdrawing letter and the letter of demand together. So we write a letter saying that the previous letter of demand is hereby withdrawing, and we say that the correct letter of demand is attached here. Likewise, we are sending a covering letter with the new letter of demand. We withdraw the previous one and we send a fresh letter of demand. That's how we do.
Is there any time frame in order to the proceed another letter of demand and the withdrawing same? I mean, within 1 month or 2 months, something like that?
Basically, it's like this. It's for example, we say the amount that we have mentioned in the letter of demand is incorrect, right? And we give him 14 days to settle, right? In our first letter of demand, if we have mentioned a lesser amount, and if customer comes and settle that amount, then we after that we will not be able to withdraw the first letter of demand, because already he has complied with the letter of demand, he has paid. So basically, if it is so, before 14 days we have to send the other letter of demand and we have to correct it. If he has not complied with the letter of demand, then what we have to do is, there is no specific time period, but before we file legal action, you have to rectify the error. So after filing the letter of demand, after filing the legal action, there's no way that you can rectify the letter of demand by withdrawing. So within a reasonable time, you have to send. And again, once you send the first letter of demand, you are no, actually not by sending the letter of demand. Once the default is made, from that point onwards, prescription start. So then when you send the letter of demand, your course of action start. So therefore, within a reasonable time, before the customer adhere to the first letter of demand, we have to withdraw the first letter of demand and send a fresh letter of demand. However, after filing the letter of legal action, there's no way that we can recover, withdraw the first letter of demand. So that is the situation. Clear?
Yes, very clear.
Any other questions? Okay, so if you have no other questions, I believe that you are now thorough with the regular money recovery action. So then I will go to the next one. Next I'm going to discuss about the hypothecary action. That is about the property or the loan or the facility which is secured by a mortgage bond, property mortgage. The previous one, this one is a facility secured by a guarantee bond, or it could be a clean facility, right? This is very important. This procedure is very important you to remember, because the next we are going to study special law Act number 2 of 1990. That is a litigation process through summary procedure. So to understand the summary procedure, you should be very thorough with the regular procedure money recovery action, and the procedure, the steps of the action, you have to be very thorough with. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand the regular summary procedure money recovery action under 2 of 1990, Act number 2 of 1990. So this part is very important. So then the next one we are going to discuss is a hypothecary action, that is about a mortgage bond action. So this is how we recover money by auctioning the mortgage property through courts. So this procedure you have to be very thoroughly study, because we have to compare this process, hypothecary action process or mortgage bond action process, with parate procedure, that is 4 of 1990. So first we'll study the hypothecary action or mortgage bond action. As I told you, this hypothecary action procedure applies when we have granted a facility secured by a collateral, property mortgage. So in a situation like that, if the facility is defaulted, as we discussed before, the first step, we have to send the letter of demand. So the letter of demand that we send in a hypothecary action is different from the letter of demand that we send in a regular money recovery action. In certain cases, the mortgage, when we are lending on mortgages, some occasions that the mortgage has been provided by the third party, which is called a third party mortgage. The borrower is a one person. The person who mortgaged the property is another person. So that type of facilities are called third party mortgages. For some occasions, the borrower himself provide a mortgage of his property. So those types of mortgages are called first party mortgages. So, however, whether it's a third party mortgage or first party mortgage, both is subject to hypothecary action. We can file action against the borrower and the mortgagor. The important thing that you have to remember here is the letter of demand is differ from the regular action. If it is a mortgage bond action, there are special wordings that you have to use, and you have to demand the money on the mortgage also. So that is important. So the first thing that we send the letter of demand, we send the letter of demand to the borrower, and we send the letter of demand to the mortgagor. So then, if normally, as in a normal case, that we give 14 days to the borrower and the mortgagor to settle the dues. If the borrower or the mortgagor fail to pay the money within 14 days, then we get a course of action. We get a reason to file action in court of law. So then, in a normal regular money recovery action, the second step, that we file legal action in court of law. Again, we file a plaint in court of law. Together with the plaint, important thing that we have to file the original mortgage bond. So that is very important, that you have to file the original mortgage bond together with the plaint and other documents that you will rely on. If the original mortgage bond is not available, if you have misplaced, then you are in big trouble, because law says, or the Mortgage Bond Act says, the original mortgage bond has to be produced to court of law. If it is not available, then there is an option that you can get a certified copy of the mortgage bond from the land registry, and with the permission of the court, that you can file action. So again, it's a discretion of the court. So therefore, my advice is always keep the original mortgage bond in safe custody of the bank. If you lose the original mortgage bond, your case can be dismissed in limine. At the beginning, the case can be dismissed, or case can be not accepted, or claim can be rejected if the original mortgage bond is not available. So that is number one that you have to remember. So then, after filing the plaint, you may remember in the regular action, second step, the court issues summons. But in a hypothecary action, you can see another additional step is there, which is called registration of lis pendens. Lis pendens is a Latin word. Registration of lis pendens means this lis pendens, it is a notice, it's a document that we have to register in the land registry, where in the land registry, in the folio where the mortgage bond is registered. So basically that document or the dependent we register after the mortgage bond, after filing the legal action. We file that in the land registry. So by filing the dependents, we give notice to the parties or any party who has any interest on the property mortgage property to come and claim their interest in the case. So it is a notice given to the general public, informing the general public about the case and inviting them to come and participate for the case and safeguard their interests and rights. So after the dependent is registered, the lawyer, the registered attorney of the plaintiff has to check the title documents at a land registry. So after perusing the land registry documents, he or she, the registered attorney, has to find out whether there are any interested parties or any parties who have registered any instrument or any document, any deeds which relates to the mortgage property. So if we find any interested parties are there, then we have to inform that to the courts by way of a declaration that is called lawyer's declaration. Registered attorney has to prepare a declaration and inform the courts that he or she has checked the records at the land registry and he found or he has not found any parties who have any interest to the property. If he has found any party who has any interest to the property, the lawyer has to send notice to those parties through courts to participate to the case. So they will then come and intervene to the case and they will participate to the courts. So then after filing the declaration, lawyer's declaration, then only the summons will issue to the defendants, that is the borrower and the mortgagor and other parties who have interest in the property. Now you see, when you compare with the regular money recovery action, in between the filing of action and serving of summons, in the hypothecary action, there are additional steps. That is filing of dependent at the land registry and then the filing of lawyer's declaration. So after that, only the summons will be issued to the defendant. So after the summons issued to the defendant, the defendants then can file answer in the case. It's like a normal regular money recovery action. The defendant can come and file their answer. So then afterwards, the court will fix the matter for trial. So at the trial again, the same procedure will apply. The plaintiff first has to give evidence and has to produce the original documents, including the mortgage bond, to courts, and all the account statements, letter of demand, the original documents has to be produced and give evidence, verbal evidence and documentary evidence. And after that, the defendant, if they want, they can call evidence. The defendant can give evidence or defendant can call other witnesses to give evidence. So after hearing the both parties, after hearing the evidence of the both parties and after perusing the documents provided by the both parties, the judge will give the judgment. So we assume that the judgment is given in favor of the bank. In a situation like that, the next step is the fiscal officer or the registrar will execute the decree or execute the judgment or a decree. That means the fiscal can seize the property, mortgage property, and auction the mortgage property. That is called execution of decree. So he can auction the mortgage property. That will be a public auction again. He will publish a notice in the Gazette. newspapers, and banners and posters will be dispatched, will be posted near the property and surrounding areas. So then after that, the property will be auctioned in a fiscal auction, in a public auction. At the auction, the bidders can bid and purchase the property. So once the property is sold, by a public auction, the fiscal, the registrar, has to bring that money to court and deposit in the case. From the case, the plaintiff can claim the money and recover the dues, and the cost of litigation can be recovered from that money received from the auction. So that is the hypothecary action procedure or mortgage bond action procedure to recover the dues to the bank by auctioning the mortgage property through litigation process. So as my experience, to finish a mortgage bond action or hypothecary action, it takes more than 4 years to get the final result. So around 4 to 5 years generally takes to get a final result. So you can see it is not that efficient in that sense, and it's a lengthy and also time consuming and also costly procedure, because you have to spend money, a lot of money, to go for litigation for 5 years. So those are the cons in the mortgage bond action. For the banks, it is not a very effective or very speedy method to recover a loan. You can't wait 5 years to get a result. So that is about the hypothecary action or mortgage bond actions. Any questions from here?
So when
Yes.
when the property is sold, if the land, like the property value has like appreciated a lot within like 5 years, and so does all the proceeds go to the plaintiff, or if like once they recover the cost due to them, the balance will it be given to the defendant? So
Right, good question. Yeah, as we are aware, normally, under normal circumstances, the land prices appreciate, but there can be situation the land price can be depreciated also. We assume the land price has been appreciated, and when we sold the property by auction, we have more money than the dues to the bank. So what will happen to the residual? Can we take all the money? No, it is not the case. From the recovery through the mortgage bond action, the plaintiff, that is the bank, can recover only the dues to the bank, right? And the cost of litigation. That's all. So dues to the bank means the capital and the interest for the full period that we can recover, and the cost of litigation also can recover. After recovering that, if there is any residual, that has to be given to the land owner, the mortgagor. So that is the procedure. Hope that is clear to you.
yes.
Right. Any other questions?
Yes, under mortgage bond action, we can easily find the mortgage property. How about the previous one, that is the under money recovery action? How
Yes.
we should find the property to be auctioned? I mean, from the courts, sometimes you said that there's the clean facilities against the personal guarantee or something. How we should find those the properties and everything
Yes.
be auctioned?
Yes, very good practical question you asked. That is the negative side of this money recovery action, unsecured facilities, because when we get there are certain things can happen. Now, when a customer is default, when he's default and when he knows that the bank is going to take action, he can alienate the properties. He can sold the properties, or he can give the properties to his family members. That is one thing. So then after that, after we get in the judgment, the only properties in his name can be seized. That is one danger that we face. The other thing is the borrower's assets or the guarantor's assets. We can't locate because those informations are not available with us. So that is a negative points of this regular money recovery action. But however, we can avoid that for up to a certain extent. At the time of lending, you know that when we are lending money at that stage, we request customers property details. Now, for example, when we are evaluating the customer, I have seen this in many banks and financial institutions. In the application itself, or in a different format, the customer has to disclose the assets. And when we are getting a guarantee bond from the guarantors also have to disclose their assets and liabilities. So some banks, they use this as a affidavit. The guarantor and the borrowers, they have to provide their assets and liabilities by way of an affidavit. So based on the affidavit at the time of the recovery, when we are executing the decree, we can seize the assets mentioned in the affidavit. Or if they have alienated the properties, if they have sold the properties while the case is pending, then we can file another action to recover those the facility, rather the properties, and we can seize those properties if they have alienated the properties once after we fix after we file the action. So that is a disadvantage that we have, but the precaution is to get a asset declaration from the borrower and also from the guarantors.
Yes, the bank, actually the bank can only consider against the freehold properties or the movable or fixed asset, right? The freehold.
What do you mean?
I mean that is sometimes there are some facilities mortgage under different banks. So that's why I say.
All right. Okay. So what you say is if the property is already mortgaged to some other banks, can we consider that as a property? Is that what you mean?
Yes, what I say that how we are going to the auction, the against the judgment. So sometimes he might have some other property under different mortgages with some other banks.
Yes. Okay.
We can't consider those properties, right?
Right. So good question. Right. Okay. We say now we got a judgment and it's a clean facility, and we found that he has a property which is mortgaged to some other bank. The question is whether we can auction that property and recover our dues. When a mortgage is there registered, the mortgagor or the other banks get the priority. That doesn't mean that we can't auction the property. We can seize the property and we can auction the property with the collaboration of the other bank. So once we seize the property, we have then the mortgage. We have to inform the courts that property is subject to a mortgage to another bank. Then the other banks will claim the money on the mortgage bond. So then we can auction the property, and first of all we have to settle the other bank on the mortgage bond. After settling the other bank, if there is any excess money residual, that can be recovered or that can be used to recover our loan our loan. So that's how we do. So basically, priority go to the mortgagor, and we have to first settle the mortgagor, and then after that, if there is excess money only, that we can recover our loan. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. So if I mean, the customer is the regularly paying his other liabilities. I mean, there is other mortgages and with other banks. So
Yes.
is there any the obligation from the particular bank in order to proceed this transaction, because their facilities are servicing regularly? No,
Yeah.
any areas or something like that?
Yes, they can come, they can file objections, but again, once it is seized by the bank, seized by the court of law, and once they going to auction the property through a fiscal auction, the other banks has no option, because they will file objection because their loan is regular. However, there's no other option. They have to basically cancel or terminate the facility, and they have to claim the facility, because if it is auction, at the auction, if someone purchased, that is again subject to mortgage, or otherwise, the 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 bank has to claim the money by terminating the facility, even though that is under regular, the payments are regular. So the same thing apply when we have a syndicate loan, or when we have a secondary or tertiary mortgage. So for example, we say we have a mortgage over a property, which is a secondary mortgage, where the original or the first, the primary mortgage with some other bank. We say our mortgage uh, is default. So then we take action. When we take mortgage bond action, hypothecary action, the other bank can't come and say that our loan is regular. So therefore, we are objecting to the hypothecary action, and the second bank cannot go for parate or go for hypothecary action. They have to basically either cancel their, or either terminate their facility, and they have to claim the money, or either they can wait, they can come to courts and they can say that they will reserve the right to go for parate or hypothecary action in case of default. Then the property will be sold subject to the mortgage of the primary mortgagor. So that's how it happens. Basically, no one will buy subject to a mortgage. So therefore, best thing is the primary mortgage holder also has to terminate the facility and has to claim the money, because they get the priority over the secondary mortgage. So is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Any other questions? You may have practical questions on these matters.
Hello.
Any question?
Hello.
Rangana, you have a question? Or?
Yeah, yes. As an example, say a customer obtain a more permanent OD of 5 million against a property mortgage of 5 million, and subsequently the bank allows him an unsecured exposure of another 2 million or something. If the facility goes bad, so the bank can go for a mortgage bond action for only that mortgage bond value, no? For the balance, they have to go for a money recovery action, or what will be the procedure?
Yes, what you said is correct, because the mortgage, now there are two facilities. One is secured by a mortgage bond, the other one is a clean facility. So the mortgage bond, once you go for the mortgage bond, once you go for a mortgage bond action, the amount that you can recover through the mortgage bond action is based on the mortgage value. So if there is a residual, then you have to return that money to the customer. So in a situation like that, what you have to do is, what is my advice is, first you have to file regular money recovery action, or you have to file both action together, regular money recovery action and hypothecary action. In the regular money recovery action, you have to plead that there is a hypothecary action pending in with regard to the mortgage bond, and you have to get a court order to deposit the money, excess money, after paying the mortgage bond, so dues on the mortgage bond, in the court of law. In case of that you get a judgment in this matter, to use that money to recover the unsecured loan, because ultimately the money of the borrower is the property of the borrower, so that can be seized for the other one without the permission of the court, that you can't utilize that money to settle the unsecured facility. So that is what we do normally. Clear, Angana?
Yes, thank you.
So any other questions? Right.
Other than Parate process, so this is the only option the bank has to proceed the legal action against the mortgage property that is under hypothecary action.
Yes, if it is a mortgage, this is the process that we have to follow, other than the Parate. And if you have a stock mortgage or book debts, then we can go debt recovery under the Debt Recovery Act. We can go under Debt Recovery Act and get a judgment to seize any property. So normally, when you have a land mortgage, there are two procedures, that is Parate procedure and hypothecary action procedure. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes. Right. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Okay. So the next we have to discuss debt recovery special laws. Right. Debt Recovery Special Law Act number 2 of 1990, Debt Recovery Special Provisions Act. Again, this is a act passed into 1990, Act number 2. Remember, this is a procedure to recover debt or facility through court procedure. This is an alternative procedure to this one, right? Again, remember, this is a normal regular money recovery action filed through in courts, and you get a result, and you get a judgment, and you execute the judgment, and you seize the properties of the borrower and auction, so, and recover the money. So this is a regular money recovery action, which normally takes about 3 to 4 years get a final result to recover a loan. So again, you see, when it comes to a regular money recovery action, 4 years to recover a loan facility is not that healthy for the banks, and it is very slow in that sense, and it costs a lot of money and time for the banks to get a final result in a regular action. So it was discussed, and it was a concern to the banking industry and also to the other industry, the financial institution. They wanted a speedy debt recovery process. So therefore, as an alternative to this process, the legislature introduced this process, that is number 2 of 1990. So when I say this is an alternative process to the regular money recovery action, remember, this is a court procedure again. So the purpose of this act to provide a speedy procedure to recover the debt through courts. So The purpose is to provide a speedy procedure. Instead of 4-year procedure or 3 to 4 year procedures or regular procedure, by introducing this new law, they have shortened the period, litigation period by adopting a new procedure. So apply to lending institution as per the Act number 2 of 1990. So who can file action under this this act is mentioned there. So the commercial banks, SMIB, NDB, NSB, DFCC, regional and registered finance companies are coming under this act. So they can file action, debt recovery, DR action under this act. So then what is the procedure? The procedure is summary procedure. That is the difference. So here I said it's a regular procedure. In Sinhala we call Samanya Karya Patipati. Samanya Karya, regular procedure means that which takes about 3 to 4 years. So the regular procedure means you have to go through all these steps, 1 to 7, all these steps, and it takes about 3 to 4 years. Then here the difference is that we apply a summary procedure, not regular procedure. Summary means lagu karya patipati. So summary procedure is a shortened version of the regular procedure. That is the difference here. And in this matter, in the Debt Recovery Act, there is a financial limitation. If the amount is 150, if the amount is below 150,000, then you can't go for debt recovery action. That has not been changed yet. If it is less than 150,000, not 150 million, 150,000, then you can't go for a debt recovery action. But as you are aware, if the amount of a debt or loan, if it is less than 500,000, you can't straight away go and file action, because there is an act called Samatha Mandala. There is a act called Samatha Mandala Panatha. That is, as per that one, Mediation Board Act, if the due amount is less than 500,000, first we have to refer the matter to the mediation board, and we have to get a non-settlement certificate from the mediation board, and then only that can be referred to the court of law. So same principle apply here. If the amount is less than 500,000, then you can't straight away go to courts and file DR action. So then you have to go through the Samatha Mandala or the mediation board process, and you have to get a certificate, non-settlement certificate. Then only you can file action. However, if the amount is less than 150,000, then you can't file DR action. Then you have to file a regular action, money recovery action, after referring to the mediation board. So that is a financial limitation mentioned there. Then the facility must be granted on the instrument or written agreement. This is another important point that you have to remember. So even though that we have given a liberty to file DR action under the Debt Recovery Act number 2 of 1990, we can't go and file action, DR action in any facility, for any facility, unless the facility is granted on a written agreement. So the original agreement you have to produce to courts. For example, if you have granted a personal loan on a written agreement, yes, then you can go and file DR action, provided that you have the original agreement. Now take casual overdraft facility, where you pay the customer's checks without any prior arrangement, without any written agreement. In a situation like that, you see, even though the provisions are there, we can't file action under DR because there's no written agreement. So there's no written agreement. So in a case like that, we can't go for a DR action. So there is another limitation in this act then, unless the facility or the loan has been granted on a written agreement or instrument. Instrument means a promissory note or check or something like that, bill of exchange. So unless the original agreement or original instrument is there, we can't file DR action. So that is very important. Those restrictions are there when it comes to DR action. So what are the restrictions? The lender or lender has to be a institution, lending institution mentioned in the DR Act. That is number one. Number two, the amount of the debt has to be over 150,000. Number three, the restriction is the debt has to be granted on a written agreement or written instrument. Then only that we can consider to file debt recovery action. So under Act number 2 of 1990. So any questions from here? Any questions?
So for facilities of 150K, even anyway, we'll have to go through mediation board before this action, no?
Yeah,
500,000.
yeah, correct. As I told you, if it is below 500,000, then the mediation board restriction is there. So then first you have to refer to the mediation board, then you have to get the non-settlement certificate, then you have to file action. However, if the amount is less than 150,000, for example, we say the due amount is 140,000. In a situation like that, even though you go to mediation board, you can't go for DR action. So then you have to go to the mediation board, you have to get the non-settlement certificate, then you have to file regular money recovery action, this procedure. You can't go for this procedure. So that is the limitation. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Any other questions? Are you clear about the three limitations? The lending institution must be mentioned, the institution mentioned in the act. So that means individuals, other parties who have not mentioned in the agreement, in the act, or other institution who has not mentioned in this act cannot file debt recovery action. That is there. And 150K limitation is there. Then the written agreement, or you have to have a instrument. So those restrictions are there. And there are other restrictions also that is not for the filing, but the amount that you can claim by DR action. Remember, under the DR action, you can claim only the capital outstanding amount and the simple interest. You can't charge default interest or penal interest under debt recovery law. So if you have in your dues, if you have calculated default interest or penal interest, then you can't file DR action. Then you have to go for normal regular action, or what you have to do is you have to separate the penal interest and default interest, and you have to basically you have to avoid, you have to take that portion out, that is the penal interest and the default interest out from the total outstanding, and you have to file action only for the capital outstanding and the normal interest. That's all that you can recover. So that is another the limitation when it comes to the recovery of recovery amount under the debt recovery action. If you for example, that's why I say that for an overdraft facility, it is not possible to file a debt recovery action, but because when it comes to overdraft facility, it includes interest on interest, interest accumulate, interest on interest is there, and if the payments are delayed, interest is not paid, the higher rates of interest or the penal interest you calculate and you add that into the overdraft facility, and technically it is not possible to segregate or separate the penal interest from the accumulated interest because all are calculated, and it is not simple, it is not easy to separate, not like a loan. So it is not possible to segregate or separate. So therefore practically when it comes to overdraft facility, it is not possible to file DR action under debt recovery law. But of course, for the loans and loans, personal loans, it's possible. Even though we have sometimes added the penal interest, we can calculate the penal interest portion and we can uh, segregate that, and we can avoid that. We can show that in our accounts, and we can avoid that penal interest part, and we can ask only the capital interest and capital outstanding and the simple interest. So that is another limitation there. Is that clear?
So how should consider the check as a, I mean, this is the instrument if we are not taking as a overdraft, I mean, so it has mentioned here, check can be considered against this under the debt recovery action. How we should get this check, I mean?
Okay, good question. Right. If we are not, I said we can't consider or we can file DER action for overdraft facility. Your question is, in that case, if we consider a check as an instrument, can we go DR action? Yes, we can go for DR action. Under DR action, if we file a DR action on a check, the only thing that we can ask the value of the check and the legal interest on the check. So if the check is presented and the check is dishonored and the check is written in favor of the bank, then we can file action against the customer, DR action, and claim the value of the check and the interest, the legal interest on that. Now, for example, now we say we have a situation like this. Sometimes customers default we say it's a overdraft facility, or we say it's a overdraft facility, clean overdraft facility, and the customer defaulted. The customer come for a settlement, and customer say, okay, give me 6 months, I will settle the overdraft in total. Then we say, okay, give us post dated check for the capital amount. We say it's 2 million outstanding in the loan in the overdraft account, and we ask him to write a check in favor of the bank, post dated check for 2 million. So now after, say, the check is dated in 3 months time, and after 3 months time we deposit the check get returned, and now we have a instrument check which is dishonored. So we can file action against the customer on the check for 2 million plus legal interest. That's all. But we can't recover the total OD amount. So is that clear?
Yes, sir. So not only the bank, I mean, that is the other than customer also can go for this against this check. I mean,
Customers,
that is the pay also. someone
No,
could
no.
return the check and he can also.
No. Under the Debt Recovery Act, they can't, because Debt Recovery Act is only applicable to the commercial banks,
Especially
SME.
these banks, right? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
only
Right.
do this. But there are provisions in other laws. If the check is returned, the payee can file action and criminal action in the magistrate court. That is a different matter, not under 2 of 1990.
Is this the fastest recovery action process comparatively, right, with other recovery action? I mean, this is the fastest one, debt recovery act.
You mean 2 of 1990 debt recovery?
Yeah.
Fastest, yes. I would say it depends. This one and the Parate are the most effective ones. Basically, 2 of 1990 matters. We get a judgment very quickly within 6-month period. Within a 1-year period, we can get the judgment. But again, then you have to go through the process that you have to seize the properties and auction the properties. That procedure is there. Because of that, the efficiency or the effectiveness is a question. But when it comes to Parate, we can acquire the property. Once we acquire the property, that the impairment of the bank comes down. So which has a very good effect to the bank when it comes to recovery. So compare the regular procedure and debt recovery procedure. Yes, this is effective and very speedy. But when you compare Act number 2 of 1990, the summary procedure, and Parate procedure, I would say Parate procedure is more effective as a recovery process.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. So any other questions? Right. So in that case, now it's the time is 12:32. So our time is over. So from next day, we'll start the procedure, 2 of 1990 procedure. I will explain the procedure and thereafter Parate procedure. So thank you very much for the participation. We'll meet next Sunday, 8:30. Thank you.